Hello everybody, this is Nato in the Nest with the first half of January 1942, and jumping right into it. Germany's opening move was to continue with the invasion of Russia. For simplicity's sake in explaining, we'll just call these units right here Army Group North, and these units right here, Center Group A, Center Group B, and then Army Group South, just for ease of reference. So Army Group North continued, as the name implies, moving north into Latvia and continuing to gobble up the Baltic states. And Center A just continue going east into Belorussia and threatening Smolensk. Center B continued east and up to Kiev's border, and then Army Group South actually turned north and cut in behind Kiev, so Germany now has Kiev completely surrounded. And then over in Paris, Germany moved an infantry into Paris to try to counter this resistance cell. The infantry is unsuccessful in taking out the resistance cell, and at that point the resistance cell had two options. It could stand its ground and fight back, or it could just disperse and not risk Germany getting another chance at destroying it. The resistance cell opted to disperse so it could continue taking away that 3 IPP from Germany. The Battle of Atlantic continued to go badly for Germany, as both this wolf pack and this wolf pack failed to sink any Allied convoy ships. The British, now American, convoy escorts along with the British ASWs proving to be just too good for the German U-boats to get through. So Germany really needs to get those advanced submarines online to be able to counter that. In Africa, the Africa Corps decided to stay put, because even though they have the strength to take this British army right here, which is these guys right here, the counterattack from the British, because the British have all these forces still down in Abyssinia, plus the Americans, who, although haven't landed yet, will land this turn, and so the Americans have all that sitting right there. So between that American army in the west and this British army in the east, Germany decided just to stay put and just to drag the North African conflict out and keep Allied forces tied up in North Africa as long as possible. Russia, they tried to counterattack here in Center A, and while a lot of units were lost on both sides, Russia was unable to take the territory. And you can see from the last video that Russian stack was substantially reduced. The Germans were as well. But Russia decided to pull back because of that stack of German units right there in East Poland. Even if the Russians would have won here, this German counterattack would have wiped it out and immediately took the territory back. And right now Russia needs to conserve units, and I know for history buffs, World War II, that's kind of an oxymoron, Russia needing to conserve units, but that's where Russia is at this stage in the game. Russia did have 2 successes. Its 2 victories were actually naval victories. Once again, I know it's an oxymoron. Naval victories in Russia are 2 words not usually used in the same sentence, but the Russian Baltic fleet was able to wipe out the German fleet, and the Russian Black Sea fleet was able to wipe out the German fleet. The Black Sea, granted, Germany only had one torpedo boat destroyer there, but take the victories where you can get them, since how Russia has had none. Those two naval battles are actually the only Russian victories so far this game against Germany, not including Finland. Then moving on to Japan. Japan continued to gobble up the Money Islands, taking Sumatra and then the rest of Borneo. On land, it retook Zhejiang here from China, and then the rest of Japan's movement was moving its ships around. See, Japan is starting to move all of its damaged ships back to the shipyards to be repaired, and Japan withdrew from Hawaii, fearing that an American counterattack from that fleet and these subs would be either able to completely wipe that out or do substantial amount of damage. So Japan opted to withdraw from Hawaii to get some distance between themselves and the American fleet, at least until those battleships can be repaired. And the rest of the Calcutta fleet that was in Calcutta has moved down to Celebes, possibly with eyes on Anzac. Manchuria had the unfortunate idea to attack Shaanxi, and Manchuria threw 7 or 8 units into it, and after 2 rolls of the dice, only 1 Manchuria unit survived, the Imperial Guard. So Manchuria retreated with heavy losses, and that was a big defeat for Manchuria, because as you can see, Manchuria doesn't have a lot of units left. That one attack almost wiped Manchuria out, so Manchuria is definitely going to be on the defensive for a while until it can build back up its forces, which this could be an opportunity for KMT and Communist China to maybe counterattack and get some northern territories back. And let's see, that's about everything that happened the first half of the turn. Kind of the strategic analysis right now is Russia needs help, and needs it badly. That the German attacks in the southern half of Russia ripped a hole in the Russian forward line completely open, 2 territories wide, and Russia had to move a lot of units around to make a new defensive line just outside of Moscow. And as you can see, they refused the line, but there's not a lot there. It's a pretty thin line, and Germany has a lot of firepower still left. So Russia needs help desperately. So the Allies, particularly America and England, are going to have to do something to draw German attention away from Russia and take the pressure off of Russia. And unfortunately, the British and Americans are not in a position to land on mainland Europe yet. They don't have the forces built up yet. So what the Allies could possibly do to pull some pressure off of Russia, as you can see right there, the Americans landed the 8th Air Force, and if they work together with the British Bomber Command, they could start bombing some German factories and force the Germans to spend money on repairing factories instead of building new tanks. And then the Americans landing in North Africa, even though these are Vichy territories and the money generated from Vichy territories goes to Germany. So America landing in North Africa and taking those Vichy territories indirectly hurts Germany, indirectly lowers their production. So it's not a lot, but it's the best the Allies can do to take the heat off of Russia. And granted, in this game, Russia is its own faction. It's not actually part of the Allies. It's part of the Comintern faction, and they have their own victory conditions. So it might seem a little odd that why would the Allies be helping Russia, seeing how if Russia does too well, the Allies actually lose. However, if Russia folds completely, then Germany can take all of its power, turn it around, turn it west, and then the Allies won't have any chance of getting back on the continental Europe. So for the Allies, they have to play kind of an interesting balancing game between Germany and Russia. The Allies want Germany to do well against Russia, but not so well that Russia folds over. And on the flip side of that coin, the Allies want Russia to do well enough to hold the Germans off, but not so well that Russia steamrolls across Europe. So the Allies have to play an interesting balancing game between Germany and Russia and kind of play Germany and Russia off against each other and help Russia, but not so much that the Russians, like I said, steamroll over Europe. So there is no right answer to exactly how you do that. At least I haven't figured out any. But we'll see what the Allies can do in the second half of this turn. Pacific is a little more straightforward. Allies just kind of smash Japan and they'll get their points, victory points. And that largely depends on an aggressive America. So we'll see what happens in the second half of January 41. Welcome back. This is the second half of January 1942, and starting off with England. England bombed Paris. They were able to do 4 points of damage on that, and then they were able to sink another German submarine in the mid-Atlantic. And then from there the British moved their forces from Abyssinia up towards Egypt to reinforce that army in Libya to start pushing out the Africa Corps. And the last Italian ship has been eliminated from the Mediterranean by the British. So the British have taken that light carrier and destroyer and moved it out into the Indian Ocean to start providing cover for this Pac-Brit convoy line. And then the Pac-Brits also invaded Siam and were successful in taking that. So it's going to put pressure on the Japanese and force Japan to divert forces away from China to counter that. Because the British presence in Siam, if they push into French Indochina, it threatens to outflank the entire Japanese and Manchuria presence in China. And see, Anzac, what they do? The Anzac, they just put another cruiser, and then they moved their transport and their hospital ship out of harm's way in case that Japanese fleet and that Japanese fleet decide to come visit Anzac. they built, or they built infantry. That's all they could build because the Free French were only sitting at 3 IPP. And the French tried to make a partisan roll to get a second partisan marker on there, but they failed. Italy, all Italy did was build more ground troops and move some stuff around to try to cover the peninsula as best they can with their limited production. America bombed West Germany, did 5 points of damage there, and then landed in Morocco. And so now the Axis powers are now caught in a pincer with the British to the east and the Americans to the west. In the Pacific, the Americans moved their fleet from San Francisco down here in shadowing the Japanese fleet. So probably wherever that Japanese fleet goes next, that American fleet is probably going to follow it, if not attack it. Then America managed to get a submarine and was able to successfully convoy the Japanese home islands, as were the British here. So between the British off Malaya and the Americans off Korea, as well as those other American subs coming in, it's going to force Japan to divert ships to escorting its convoy lines, because Japan lost $10 this turn alone from Allied submarines sinking Japanese convoy ships. And just like predicted, because of Manchuria's disastrous attack into Shaanxi, KMT was able to make a counterattack and is taking J-Hole once again. We'll see how long KMT actually manages to hold on to that. Let's see what else happened. Combat-wise, or anything of interest, that's about all that the Allies did. British repaired their battleship right there. So, considerations for the Axis players, because the Allies just went, is Germany. Remember at the first half of this video I said that the Allies needed to do something to take some of the pressure off of Russia. And granted, all the Allies did was strategically bomb West Germany and Paris and land in Morocco. So in the grand scheme of things, that's not a whole lot of concern for Germany. Although to repair those two factories, it is going to take 1/6 of Germany's total production currently. But the Americans landing in Morocco, that only brings the Vichy French down by 1, so in reality Germany only loses $1. But the greater concern is that right there, and that right there, and that right there. Between America and the British, the Allies put down 7 transports this turn. As well as America has unlocked special forces, so America now has Rangers that it can start producing. And once those actually get into an actual combat scenario, I'll explain exactly what they do, because that's a house rule. But the significance of the Allies putting down 7 transports in 1 turn tells the German player that the Allies are very serious about preparing for a major amphibious landing somewhere in the continent of Europe. So the Germans, it's still a couple turns away, because yeah, the Allies put down a buttload of transports, but as you can see, there's not the ground forces to back it up yet. So Germany still has a couple turns, but now Germany's going to have to start thinking about putting more troops in Western Europe and protecting this coastline a little better, because 7 transports on top of the let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7 transports on top of the 4 that are already right there, plus the 4 American transports that are sitting right there. That's close to 15 transports that the Allies now have, which means, assuming America and Japan, or America and England, sorry, coordinate properly, that's over 30 units that the Allies can drop anywhere in Europe now, because the Allies, with the exception of a couple German U-boats, the Allies have complete dominance over the oceans. So it's not an immediate pressure reliever, but Germany does have to respect that, and will eventually have to start sending more production towards the west instead of the east, or start pulling existing troops off the eastern front and sending them back west to cover the very large amphibious invasion that is coming eventually. Italy, there's not much they can do but just hold out as long as they can. With a production of only 8, there's really not much they can do. Japan, it's just gotta... Japan's main threat is America. They're the ones that can really hurt them. So Japan needs to produce ships as much as it can to try to hold off the juggernaut that is American production that's going to be steamrolling across the Pacific soon. America, this turn alone, put down 4 transports, 3 destroyers, and then moved up a cruiser, a fleet carrier, and started a battleship all in one turn. So Japan is going to have to start playing probably more defensive war and just keep pumping out as many ships as they can while still trying to hold on to the mainland of China. So Japan's got its work cut out for it, especially if the American player, who's aggressive and is not afraid to lose units and just continuously hammers the Japanese fleet every chance it can get, Japan's going to have a really hard time keeping up with ship production. And that's on top of Anzac and the Pac Brits and the KMT and the CCP. So in reality, it's a 5-on-1 fight for Japan. If 5-on-2 if you count Manchuria, but Manchuria is more or less an extension of Japan. So we'll see what Japan can do in the Pacific, but they got their work cut out for them. And so that's it for January 1942. Next video will be July of 1942, and we'll see what happens then. Thanks for watching. Like it, love it, leave a comment down below. We love to hear from you. Have a good night, everybody. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to mention. America finished a technology, so America now has heavy bombers and can start producing heavy bombers. And the British, who last turn finished advanced submarine warfare, have now started advanced factories, so they can start pumping out more units per factory. And none of the other technologies have changed yet. Germany's still working on advanced submarines. Russia's still working on advanced artillery. Japan hasn't really done much with their long range. They haven't bought a tech roll dice in several turns now. But other than that, that's it.